All right, here we are. Hey, Rich.
Hey, what's going on? Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? We want to thank you for joining us. It is Comics with Rich, Sunday night, live. I'm back, yours truly. I have Derek Harrison in the building. Derek is one of our black comic overlords. He's in the building with me tonight. And tonight, we are going to be chopping it up about Nita Hawes issues 3 and 4. And before we get into all that goodness, I want to ask you, Derek, how you doing, my brother?
I'm feeling really good, keeping busy in my day job, but so glad to have Black Comic Lords to give me something that I can just get a break from the day and enjoy my
Yeah,
evenings. So really enjoying that. And also, I just want to say we've already got some people coming through in the comments. So Rob's
cool,
Comics,
cool.
good to have you here. Amani, how you doing? Paul, what's up?
That's
All
what's up.
right.
Guys, want to thank you guys for joining us on tonight. We're going to have a dope discussion about a dope book. But before we get there, I want to take some time to publicly acknowledge and give tribute to a great creative in the history of Black comics. And I'm talking about no other than Dwayne McDuffie. Just to give you some bio information, Dwayne Glenn McDuffie was born on February 20th, 1962. His untimely passing was February 21st, 2011. He was an American writer of comic books and television. He's known for producing and writing the animated series Static Shock. He wrote Damage Control, Justice League Unlimited, and Ben 10, which was an independent creation. It was also a co-founding member of the book or the company Milestone Media. And so, for those of us in comic books, particularly that are familiar with Milestone, are very familiar with Dwayne McDuffie. Dwayne McDuffie had been in comics long before the creation of Milestone. He has worked on Marvel and DC books and independent books. I have a sampling of some of his work behind me, whether we're talking the Milestone stuff, we're talking Icon, we're talking about the guy that helped create and wrote Static. Uh, he wrote the first 4 issues of Blood Syndicate. He also wrote this book. I've got my head in the wrong way. This Prince book. He did a book with Prince with Dennis Cowan. He did that. Uh, he also did Deathlock, and he's written several other books, including that's not on my wall, Exo Man, which is a Valiant title, and he also did some Iron Man stuff too. Iron Man issues 251 and 252. So this is a guy who has been in the business a long time, and also he was the creator of Damage Control. He did write and create Damage Control. And shout out to Marvel, uh, the cinematic universe, because they acknowledged him in the last Spider-Man movie with him creating and originating that particular brand in the franchise. And it's so funny because everything kind of goes full circle. I talked about it on my blog, but the first issue of Damage Control, I think I have it on. Yeah, this book here, Spider-Man is on the cover. This is the first Damage Control book, and Spider-Man is on the cover. So I just thought that was dope of them to do that. And again, man, I really wanted to just talk a little bit briefly about this brother because his work, um, we still enjoy it. The last blog I wrote was a lamentation of sorts, my thoughts about Dwayne McDuffie, and I was actually, to be transparent, Derek, I've been kind of frustrated with comics, and when you're frustrated with something that is supposed to give you joy, it can really put a damper on your excitement or your ability to enjoy the hobby. And so the solution to all of this is to find some comics to read. And recently, I went and dug in my long boxes and I pulled out Justice League of America. I started, I think I started like at issue 24, 25. No, it's like 20, I'm sorry, 23. And I went through like issue 33, 33, 34. All of those books were written by Dwayne McDuffie. And I had this was just me rereading these books. And just was having so much fun reading it and just reliving some of the exciting parts of that run, because this is a run of Justice League that had, Steel in it, Firestorm, the Black Firestorm is in it, Bronze Tiger is in it, Vixen is in it, and of course all the other characters that, as far as the Justice League is concerned, is in it as well. And there was a milestone tie-in, issues 27, 28, I want to say, which I have on the wall here, 27 and 28. The crossover event. Everybody knows about the Worlds Collide crossover event, but when Dwayne McDuffie was writing Justice League, he did another crossover, and it was this one. And it was just good to just read some good stuff, man. And so I was kind of clueless that the timing of this whole thing, just to be perfectly honest, I had no idea that we were getting ready to celebrate his supposedly if he had lived, he would have been 60 years old today.
Mm-hmm.
And he passed away, of course, on February 21st, which is tomorrow, in 2011. And so I saw a lot of stuff this month as far as Black history is concerned. And I'm being honest with you, like I said, I'm being transparent. I was a little irritated. I was on my old man grumpy. I was on my old man grumpy-ish, if I could say it like that. And because I saw no one talk about Dwayne McDuffie. Nobody. Not Milestone, not DC. And I'm not saying that there haven't been people that had said anything, but to my knowledge and up to that point, I heard no one said nothing. And so the timing of this whole thing was just amazing. And I know that was nobody but God to just kind of led me to do that, because again, I was just in a place where, man, I want to just read some fun stuff. And it just happened to be, I read a bunch of other stuff too, but that kind of stuck out. So let me ask you, Derek, how familiar are you with any of Dwayne McDuffie's writings?
I got to be honest, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
too familiar because I've
Yeah.
started reading some of the Milestone books, and I'm definitely old enough to have read them, but I just wasn't a comic book reader
Right.
during those years. So, I've kind of started really reading within the past 2 years, and I've, jumped in and out of the Milestone books. And going back to even Ben 10, you mentioned Ben 10. If that's the same
Mm-hmm.
Ben 10 that I know of, my kids used
Yeah.
to watch that show. I had no clue
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
a Dwayne McDuffie creation.
Yeah. 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 I mean, this guy, his fingerprints are all over comic nerdom. The Static Shock show, the All-Star Superman movie, which is one of the best interpretations of Superman by Grant Morrison. He did the animation uh, editing for that. He's been an editor at Marvel and DC. So this guy's just kind of been like over the place. And I have books, back issue books, where he was, Marvel used to do this thing and DC used to do this thing where they would talk about up and coming creators. And he was one of those guys. And so later on, when Milestone kind of came out or whatever, it was amazing to me that this is the guy kind of like with Dennis Cowan and a few others that were going to, set the world on fire, so to speak. So I want to encourage you, Derek, to go find some original Milestone stuff. But if you really want to enjoy just fun fun, hilarious comics. Go get some of that Damage Control. It's like 3 volumes of Damage Control, man. And I'm telling you, one of the things I talked about in the blog that I wrote recently, I talked about there's an issue that's issue number 2, first volume, issue number 2, where there's a character, and we understand it's really him, but it's a black guy who has to go to Doctor Doom and ask him for, payment for damages that, he helped cause. And I'm just thinking to myself the whole time, it's like, who has got nerve to go and give Doom a bill for some damage? I mean, Doom will just kill you and won't even blink twice. So, but it's little stuff like that he did. And there's so many other stories, man, as far as what his contribution was. I'll say this one, and then I, kind of we'll shift gears. The whole situation with Battlestar. Battlestar's initial name was not Battlestar. They were going to call this character Bucky, and it was his suggestion. It was his suggestion to the writers at the time. He gave them the history of that word buck and how that kind of like, that's not a good thing to do when you talk about a black character. And so that's how Battlestar became Battlestar. That Dwayne McDuffie was directly responsible for that change. And so it was those kind of things and all the stuff that he did, the cutting edge stuff that he did at Milestone, that we have the brands that we have. And shout out to Milestone Media and 2.0. I listen, guys, I want everybody to know this. I want to go on the record and say, hey, I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job. However, you got big shoes to fill. And one of the reasons why you got big shoes to fill was a GOAT named Dwayne McDuffie. He set the bar. He set it high. And so I want these guys to understand that part of me, my grump or my gripe with some of the things that they're doing isn't because I don't enjoy what's being written. I just know that this guy, along with those who wrote on the original Milestone stuff, set the standard. And so I'm like, I expect you guys to hit it. The art is phenomenal. I enjoy the art on the new stuff. But the writing, I might want to go to the Dwayne McDuffie class. I'm just saying. So anyway, shout
Just
out
throwing
to
down the gauntlet.
yeah, man. Shout out to Dwayne McDuffie. I love that brother's writing. He's one of my personal comic book heroes. And, for me as a comic book head, I have someone that looks like me. As much as I enjoy Chris Claremont, as much as I enjoy Eric Larson and Todd McFarlane and all these guys, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby or whatever, we don't, in our community, Black spaces, we don't have a whole lot of people that we can just be rah-rah about. You know what I'm saying? But Dwayne McDuffie can stand shoulder to shoulder with all of those guys I just named and be respected and appreciated. So that's how I feel about that. I really, I opened my blog with the words, I miss Dwayne McDuffie. And I really do, because for a comic book guy like myself, his work, gave me joy. And it still does to this day in terms of reading fantastic stories, enjoying the humor and the seriousness. Because he could be, as much as he could be very funny, he could also be very serious. I recommend that you go back and read some of the Deathlock. I think it's volume 2. He wrote issues like 1 through 25, I want to say. But I mean, he did some phenomenal stuff in that run with Deathlock. Hadn't been done, even though they've done another volume of Deathlock. Nothing compares to that. I mean, that's just how amazing this cat was. So shout out to him, man. But I wanted to just kind of put that out for the first few minutes of our live broadcast, shouting him out. So to all of you Milestone fans and all of you Dwayne McDuffie fans, I feel you, and we appreciate you. May that brother rest in power continually, and may Milestone continue to soar, and that's that. So,
And Rich,
moving right along. Yes.
If anybody watching this video wants to
Mhm.
read your blog, where can they go to read your blog?
You can actually go to blackcomiclords.net, and there are blogs there. But if you want to read everything that I write on blackcomiclords.net is not there. But if you want to read my personal blog, it's called Blackwards Living in Comics at blogspot.com. That's Blackwards Living, just as it's spelled, Blackwards Living, like backwards, but instead of backwards, it's Blackwards Living in Comics .blogspotted.com. So check me out, share, subscribe. Just, I do what I do, little blurbs or whatever. I never will call myself a journalist, but I do have opinions and I don't mind sharing them. And some of the stuff is pretty strong. So some of the reserve stuff or some of the fire doesn't make it to the Black Comic Lords website because I have partners that I have to answer to. But if you want unapologetic Richard Wright on comics and how he feels, you can go check out my blog. That's what's up. Appreciate that, man.
All right, all right,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
And-
tonight, man, look, we talking about one of the most phenomenal horror comics out right now. Nita Hawes, I'm sorry, Nightmare Blog by the esteemed Rodney Barnes. Shout out to Black Comic Lords and shout out to uh, Rodney Barnes. We did an interview with him. It just went up a day or two ago. And we want you guys to go check that out. Go on YouTube, go to our YouTube page, and you can even find it in our Facebook links for that interview. But we had a phenomenal interview with him, and we talked a little bit about Nita Hawes. And so tonight we're going to talk in particularly issues 3 and 4. Now, listen, guys, we're not going to go back. For those of you that need to go get a late pass, you can find the video what me and Derek did. We talked about issues 1 and 2. So we can't talk about issues 1 and 2. We got to move this train along. So tonight we're going to start off with issue 3, and we're going to work our way hopefully through issue number 4. So, Derek, let's just jump into this, brother. Let me first ask you, we started with issue 3. How did you feel about issue 3?
Well, you know me, when I left issue 2 and I still had some questions. I wanted to learn more about Howling Henry. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to learn more about the connections between all these murders that are taking place and Howling
Yeah,
Henry. Why is he going after them? And obviously, wanted to learn more about Nita because she's already shaping up to be a great character, right? She's
right.
been through a lot, as we talked about with Mr. Barnes. She's very cynical, and she's very cynical for a reason, right? And she's had a lot of
Right.
loss in her life. So how all
Yeah.
that comes together to create the person she is and the situation she's in, and then how that comes to play with the situation that she finds herself in. I was just ready to get right into it. So I was excited to get to 3, and it definitely answered
Mm-hmm.
some of the questions, and it created a few more. And by the way,
Yeah. So
quick shout out to Paperbacks and Soundtracks, James Tomlinson, behind the scene, got Herschel.
yeah.
There you go, Herschel. Hey. And then okay, all right, Jamari Kane's already talking about Anansi.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
we gonna get into a Nazi. That's actually this cover here anyway. I love this cover. This is a pretty amazing cover. Even the back jacket on this is pretty cool, man. Um, you know, but yeah. So issue 3, which features, Paul's brought up a Nazi. So this is actually a picture of a Nazi, and he's shooting dice. You know, why the God got to be ghetto? But you know, he goes straight to the hood looking for a dice game. But hey, we're not going. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But the issue opens up with some words that Rodney Barnes writes in regards to who the light, or in regards to the light, and who Jehovah is as regards to the light. But he quickly transitions it from heaven to earth, where all the chaos is taking place. And then we get a nice shot of Anansi as a spider changing into a human being. And he begins to talk about, who he is in regards to his people. It's interesting in that he believes that he has people, but the people may not necessarily recognize him or know him. And he's very much aware of that. He's very conscious of that. But he makes a point to say that these are my people. And he makes a point in one of the panels to say that his people need something. I'm just paraphrasing, but they need something tangible. They can't no longer rely on prayers, and they need some action. Matter of fact, his word is they require a God who views love as a verb. And so when you think about that, that's really, I think, all anybody wants from God is for God to love them and to feel the love of God. And so he's very cognizant of that reality, that our people in this country, because when a people are oppressed, the one thing that they need more than anything is hope in the middle of that oppression. And so he recognizes that he doesn't have all power, but he does have some power. And for that reason, he makes his interest into this particular setting, looking like Charlemagne the God, because that's who he looks like. He looks like Charlemagne with a fade, in my opinion. I don't know if Jason Sean Alexander was going for that when he did this picture, but the one picture, I don't know if you can bring it up. It's like
Oh, I
page,
know I know which one. I know which one you're talking
yeah,
about. Let's see if I can
yeah,
pull that up.
yeah. See if you can pull that up if you don't mind, because it's really a picture that it's not germane to just he just kind of looks like Charlemagne, but it's a picture that a lot of black young men find themselves in that position. Um, Whether you just kind of like squatting, or whether you shooting dice, or whether you just kind of posing. Yes, that's the one. Or whether you just kind of just chilling. It just it. He he's got his fist. He's got his fist clenched, and he's got his fingers touching the earth or whatever, and he's got his Jordans on, and so, or his Nikes at least.
And
And
you got the spider and light behind him too. You
yeah,
can
yeah,
see.
yeah. Yeah, so it's an amazing picture. Shout out to the art, man. I mean, the art in this book, and all of the Jason Sean Alexander stuff, and at some point we're going to have to like try to get to Jason. We may have to ask Mr. Barnes to hook us up. But I definitely want to at some point talk to somebody about this art, man, because this art is phenomenal. And so he comes into this book. And actually he is the chief person in this book. I think I talked to Paul, and I think he said that Anansi is his favorite character, and so this is kind of we're gonna call this the Paul issue. We're gonna call this the Paul issue because I know Paul he has a fondness for Anansi,
He
and
grew up
so
with the Nazi stories. Yep.
yeah, he grew up with Anansi stories. Cultural, a cultural thing, and that's that's an amazing thing all in it of itself about our people. that our people are not a monolith and that our people have different experiences. But we're all the same people, but we just have different experiences. Whether it's in the islands or whether it's stateside. Um, so, what is your thoughts about Anansi? I mean, how do how do you take him? How do you see him?
Well, he comes on strong, right?
Yes.
You have his intro, and you're getting background on him in case you don't know about Anansi as a character across different stories, different myths. This is giving you a little bit of background. But his first interaction is with the guys playing dice on the street, and he proceeds to tell them a story, try to
Uh-huh.
give them some perspective on how they got to be, where they are right
Yeah.
now. I guess we'd say that, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's also giving the readers an understanding too, schooling us on Anansi and his perspectives. And I've gone back to read, even though I can't remember a single word of the passage. I've read it, 5 or 6 times now, because his talking is very powerful, right? And actually, I was
Yeah.
kind of wondering. This kind of goes back to storyline. Is he doing this because he knows what's that at some point the police are going to come up and try to break this game up, and he's
Yeah.
trying to get to the police because he knows something about those police. I'm guessing.
Right. It's interesting. We don't want to get ahead because that's kind of like a few because we got to deal with Nita and this officer. But to Nazis, you know what? Let's hold that out because I definitely want to talk about that kind of speech that he
Okay.
gave
Yeah, you're right.
because I
You're
do
right.
have
You're right.
thoughts. But
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So we move to the crime scene. We go to a crime scene where Nita and the officer, Detective Harding, I think that's her name, and she's taught. They're at the crime scene um, where Howland Henry has made a mess. So um, and they're talking about they're this they're giving the interpretation of what they're looking at. This horseman or whatever it is on the wall. And Nita's talking about how she studied demonology and things of that nature, and she's never seen nothing like this. And so she's trying to get her to buy into that there's something demonic going on. That this is not, you know, a logical explanation for it. And the cop is looking at this like she said, "Are you really asking me to buy into the idea that an 80-year-old catatonic blues singer is killing people for Lord knows why?" And so, it's one of those things where, we want to in stories or whatever, there's always that rational person or that logical person who wants to explain away, the supernatural. Um, Even though Nita is very, very cynic, very much a cynic,
Hmm.
she understands that there's something deeper here at play. But this cop, she's just used to seeing, murders and criminals doing things, whatever. And that's her wheelhouse, and that's her logic. So it's like, okay, you can't tell me that you believe that a blues singer that's catatonic is running around killing and tearing up, and painting the walls with people's blood. But that's what Holly Henry is really doing. But she's having this interesting exchange uh, with her, and she's letting Nita is trying to is insisting that she really considers what's being said here. And she tells, he says, while you're doing conventional investigation, I'll try to fill in the gaps of Henry's life before he ended up at Happy Acres, someplace in his story, may be the key to stopping this. you know so she's trying to work with the police, but the officer is kind of adamant in her thoughts. Is like, look, I'm the cop, not you. So, you know what I'm saying? But Nita is an investigator. She's inquisitive. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Her background, she can't walk away. You know what I'm saying? Even if um, her involvement, you know what I'm saying? She's kind of there as a courtesy, so to speak, but she knows more than they do. Talking about the cops, and yet, you know, the cops are like, I'm not, I'm not buying this or whatever. And he says, just don't get carried away, Nita. You're not a police officer. And she says, but when she leaves, the last thing you have to remind me is of that, you know. And that's a loaded,
Yeah.
loaded statement. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you don't have to remind. I know I'm not the police. You know, and that we can go a whole lot of different places with that statement. But you know, everything is not as what it seems when it comes to Nita Hawes Nightmare Blog. And we get that in the next scene, which is Nita sitting down, having a drink. I guess that's wine, and invoking or calling out her brother. She says, "I know you out there somewhere." I mean Casper. She calls him Casper. You know, I mean, I'm sorry, I mean Jason. And he says, "Not funny." And so we have this exchange between Jason and Nita, who we haven't really fully discovered is really real. We know that he's real to her, but is he really tangible in that, okay, this ghost is really, like Mr. Barnes said, her sidekick. What's his role going to be? But, they kind of have a conversation. And it's a pretty interesting conversation in that he feels somewhat responsible for her, even though she's the one that is supposed to be quote unquote responsible for him. And because he says to her, he asks the question, he says, is it wrong that I feel guilty about all this? This investigation and all the things that she's doing, her depression, her drinking, he feels responsible for that. And she said, and why would a friendly yet annoying ghost feel guilt? So even though Nita is heartbroken that her brother is dead, she has a connection to him that she it's just like he's alive, because you know how if you have a sibling, sometimes our siblings can be annoying, and so it's a welcome annoyance. I like to believe in her life. It's the only thing that is consistent in her life is this relationship with her brother. And so when you think about that, how does Nita live without him? Because he asks her another question. He says, if I just moved on to wherever my soul was going to go, you wouldn't be, well, he said, not a question, but a statement. He said, if I just moved on to where my soul was going to go, you wouldn't be facing all of this danger. So, how is it that he feels like she's facing danger because of him? It's like if he just moved on, then Corson or whatever's lurking in the shadows would be close by. So clearly he knows, or he can sense the trouble. He sees her going to these crime scenes and things of that nature. Um, but I'm just curious as how he makes that connection. And
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Good point. Because I was wondering how much he knew at
Yeah,
this point. Um, obviously he knows there's some demons at play, and she's going to step right into it. But I don't think he knows at this point that exactly what could be coming after her.
right.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting exchange, and they ended with um, her telling him I love you, Nita, and I love you too, Jason. And then the next scene, or in that same panel, you see her sitting, sipping the wine alone. It's as if he just disappears or whatever. So I don't know if that's
Yeah,
Rodney
another
Barnes and Jason's.
another great panel there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if that's Rodney Barnes messing with our heads. Is that a real shot, or did he just like disappear, or it's just that she's having this conversation in her head?
Hmm.
Because I asked him a direct question: is he real? So he wouldn't commit that he was that she or that Jason was real, but he did allude to that he will continue to play a part, in her life, and so that's an interesting thing. So I really enjoy those exchanges with them, because that you get this brother and sister bond, this trauma that they share, and this love that they have one another because they feel like they have to protect one another for different reasons. And so, it's. I mean, issue 3 is amazing, and before is just off the off the chain. But we'll get there when we get there. But we switch scenes and we go to Annapolis, Maryland. Shout out to Rodney Barnes' hometown. That's where he put this book in. So he let us know that that's the hometown. But she goes. Nita gets on her detective grind, and she goes to some libraries, and she digs up Howlin' Henry's catalogs and news, press clippings and things of that nature. And she's trying to find out why Howlin' Henry wound up at Happy Acres. And can we just stop and talk about why a retirement rehabilitation facility is called Happy Acres? What's happy about being in a I'm just saying.
Yeah. That sounds like the just very pick a name out of the sky. What's a common name you think
Yeah,
of?
you know what I'm saying? I'm like, let's call it Happy Acres. Even though we have a bunch of unhappy people here, okay, let's just go with it. But but that's what they called it. So anyway, she's there, and she's trying to figure out, why Henry is, what his history is, and how did it lead him to be there. And so, she's listening to this music, and she's just kind of going through it or whatever, and you know, she's looking for some insight into his music. She really doesn't get that. But what happens is she talks with a librarian named Mrs. Isaac. She asks her, she says, "Do you know where I can find out more about Howlin' Henry? I listened to his records, read press clippings and bios. After his performing days, he seems to have disappeared." And she, I guess, has some, history with Howlin' Henry in terms of being a fan. She says, "Man, Howlin' Henry was something else. After they closed Carr's Beach, no one saw hide nor hair of him. Is there any way I could visit Carr's Beach?" And Mr. Barnes, again, he let us know that is a real place. Um, and she says, "And looking at it today, you wouldn't think there was a time when black folks ruled the roost." So she begins to kind of get into some of the history of that particular area, and talking about when Howlin' Henry was the guy, when he was doing his thing, and people from miles around would come and see him. But I guess at this time he was this Miss Isaac, she was a young girl during this time. It's when black people in this country, in segments, have done fairly well. Not everywhere, but in some pockets in America, black people prosper. And this was one area. And of course, time and chance happen, and things are not the same. Historically, certain neighborhoods, for example, I live in Houston. I grew up in Houston, and one of the neighborhoods in the city. It's called Third Ward, and Third Ward went through regentrification, and now it's not even called. It's still called Third Ward. That's what the black people call it, but the commercial and the mainstream people, public, call it now Midtown because they basically gutted it, you know, reinvented it, and now it's something totally different. Doesn't look like nothing like it was when I was a little boy growing up and going to Third Ward. I had a friend who lived in Third Ward by TSU, and I'm very familiar with that area. So I think we have something similar going on here. But she says I was a young girl at the time, but I remember it was like yesterday. And she said, "How was Henry doing near the end of his performing days?" And she says the world was changing. You know, we're talking, I guess, 60s, and so people were talking about the war. People were talking about civil rights, things of that nature. And so Henry was an old blues singer, and so there was not a market that they could exploit um, for blues singers. People wanted to talk about what's going on, like Marvin Gaye said in his record, "What's going on." Um, you know, Artists like Bob Dylan were changing America from the inside, and so we get this exchange with Howlin' Henry and his record producers, and it doesn't bode well for Howlin' Henry. And so I want to get your thoughts about what is it that in this particular exchange uh, was impactful to you. What did it say to you?
Yeah, well, you don't get the full story yet. That comes a little bit later.
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
what you see, obviously, first of all, the end result is that Hal and Hank, they made a mess of him. He got beat pretty badly. But
Yes.
obviously, what he wants the ability to do is to well, they don't give you the real reason for this fight. You just know that Howling Henry's pretty upset about something here, and he's going to the two guys that he signed this contract with to try to talk some sense into them. And there's a confrontation. Um, they start drawing fists, and as Miss Isaac said, they beat that man like an Alabama mule. Now, interesting thing is very fortunate, I guess, for Nita, that she goes to this library, and it just so happens the librarian that she talks to is somebody who witnessed this event. She was a little kid,
Right.
kind of hiding behind a fence, it looks like. So she's able to
Right.
tell Nita part of the story, which is
Mm-hmm.
that Hal and Hank got beat up pretty badly by these guys, and there's also uh, a panel that shows what he looked like afterwards. And as you see there, as he lay there, I'll never forget the look in his eyes. So very spooky
Yeah.
picture, and this guy was hurt pretty bad.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate that that was the norm. Guys with a lot of people that were in the record business. Um, a lot of them were not straight guys. These were guys from the streets. These were tough guys. If they weren't from the streets, they had connections to the streets. History has shown us time and time again about certain record labels and artists who, um, they made their money in the music business, but they got their founding money from street guys. One of the movies kind of talked about this a little bit was the Five Heartbeats, Robert Townsend's movie. And shout out to him because he's the creator of Media Man, my man Herschel's favorite superhero.
Mm-hmm.
And but he talks about that in the movie. And one of my favorite scenes in the movie is the record label owner, Big Red. Uh, there's a guy, artist comes to him they're at a party and tells him, he said, "Hey, I need to talk to you about my royalties." And so Big Red is like, "My hours, 8 to 5, Monday to Friday." So, they're at a party, you know what I'm saying? And so he's like, "No, no, no, we're gonna talk about this now." So of course he beats the guy up and dangles him over a balcony. And it just speaks to, even though that was a fictional movie account, there are people that have experienced some of that kind of stuff. And so when it comes to Howland Henry here, he kind of gets a taste of that, unfortunately. But this is a tale. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I mean to interrupt.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and all the librarian sees is that Howling Henry is very aggressive and upset, and the way she describes it, uh,
Right,
the the two people that had his contract, they were trying to talk reason to him. So that's what Nita knows at this point, aside from the fact that he took this really bad beating once once they started getting in the fight.
right. Then we transition to another horror scene. Howland Henry, catatonic blues singer, starts singing. When when people start singing, when Howland Henry starts singing, there's gonna be some flower bringing. so,
Yes.
so he comes out the bush. It kind of reminds me of that Homer Simpson meme where he's kind of hiding going into the bush. He's coming out the bush. So he comes out the bush singing, and he says, "Down by the river on a cool, mighty cool day, I was fixing to take a dip with my boy sitting there. But boss man said, darkies best not stay. And I bet not see neither one of you around this way." So he goes to somebody's house, and they kind of like lounging by the pool and look like it's a mighty fine home, and chaos ensues. And he says, "We looked at that cracker and did the math. There was two of us that blocked his path. So I picked up a rock and bust his head, and saints alive that sucker lay dead." And so we get these little demons, or I don't know what they are. They're just monsters,
Yeah.
and they
A,
go
a
to tearing.
a lot of them too.
Yeah, and they come right out of Howland Henry's mouth, and he just goes to or the demon in him goes to work, and it's a mess. And you see this little boy who's in the pools watching this, and he has this horrific look on his face. And yeah, it's pretty bad, pretty bad. You know, thing about horror comics is that you get some horror comics and you get some stuff, and it looks, you kind of get it, but it ain't really scary. It's not, you know. But this stuff here, the imagery that's in this book, pretty scary.
Yeah, yeah,
And then you see this panel. Henry's still singing, of course, and you see this guy who has no legs trying to crawl away, and he's just kind of smiling at him. He says, "No, from that day on, old Henry ain't run, no matter the drama or big the gun. Old Henry became a man like a lot of folks say as the blood poured out of that hateful old face. And we swam in the river and played all day." And we see him barefooted, of course, crush the head of this guy. And he just walks away. And I'm not sure who these people were. Clearly, they
we
somebody that. Go ahead.
yeah, we don't know yet.
We don't know who they are yet, so I'm just like, okay. My man is just out here, you know what I'm saying? He's singing the blues and, you know, taking numbers. But our next scene, we go back and we get back with our boy Anansi. And first thing comes out his mouth when he sees the brothers out there. Fellas, I've been looking up and down West Baltimore in search of a crap game, and lo and behold, it appears I've finally found one. And they just kind of chilling or whatever, and they draw their guns on because they don't know this dude. They don't know this dude. So he got his hands up, you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh my, looks like y'all don't want to let the old spot in. Then he shows them, you know, a roll of money, and all is forgotten. So they kind of get into it, and of course we see the, you know, the the crazy, you know, guy with the weapon pointed sideways, like, come on, roll, Gump. Now that's the love I was looking for. And so he begins, he says, while we playing, how about I tell you gentlemen a story? We know Nancy in the Yoruba folk tale or folk legend owns all the stories. So he is the storyteller. He owns all stories. Every story that we know or whatever, quote unquote, you know, comes from him. And so he's telling them a story, and he begins to, you know, kind of preach, if you will. That's because that's what it was to me.
Yeah.
I saw this in two different ways. I saw this as preaching, but I also saw it as signifying. Uh, you know, we have cats that we grow up in the neighborhoods with, or that could tell a story, or can spin a yarn, as some would say, or in this case with a Nazi, spin a web. Matter of fact, side note, in the Dwayne McDuffie Justice League runs that I was reading, a Nazi is in the story, and he calls it spinning a web. So Nazi spins his webs, and so I thought that was pretty interesting too, that a Nazi was a character in one of the Dwayne McDuffie stories. So that's just a side note. But anyway, he begins to tell them, you know, about our sojourn in America, and it kind of, and I know Mr. Barnes is friends with Orlando Jones, who played Anansi or Minster Nancy on American Gods. And there are two iconic scenes from American Gods that I recommend everybody watch. There is a scene where we first meet him in the story, in the hull of a slave ship, and there is a captured African that begins to pray and asks Anansi for help. He shows up, and so Anansi's power is his storytelling. So he begins to tell his story, and I can't, because it's explicit, and I can't say what he says, but it is one of the most powerful scenes in Hollywood, I would say, ever. And I'll be honest, I think his power and impact in saying what he says with passion was too strong. Because that scene, if you have never ever seen it, for those of you who have ever seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But for those of you who have never seen it, I promise you, if you go and watch that scene, you will be amazed, because he hits a nail on the head when he talks about history. Because he said, I'm going to tell you a story. And what he begins to do, not to their knowledge, but he begins to prophesy and tell them about what's waiting for them at the end of their voyage, which was slavery, which was oppression, which was the cotton and tobacco fields. And so there's that story of that scene, and then there's another scene from American Gods where he is sitting with not sitting, but he's standing over a uh, a body, and there's another god, a female god there, and a caretaker or undertaker, I should say. And he begins to talk about black women or black girls that disappear every day in America. That for every 30 seconds, another black girl is snatched. That little speech, it's like only 2 or 3 minutes. That little speech, he put so much power in it. And it's like, I could not understand, I do not understand how they were not able to work it out, because he brought an element of passion to that role that after he was gone, it was a wrap. And so when we talk about this particular scene here, I would like to think, and I don't know for sure, but I want to ask Rodney Barnes, was this inspired by Orlando Jones's speech in the slave ship, in the hull of the slave ship? Because it's very eerily in this kind of fashion. And so he talks to them, and like I say, he's kind of like, it's like he's preaching. And so, they just kind of sitting there looking at him, kind of watching him, or whatever, because they're trying to figure out, who is this dude? You know what I'm saying? But they know he's somebody that is not like them. They know he's different. But, hey, he's got a roll of money. That's all they care about. They got the guns in their hands, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? They keeping their eyes on this dude. And he's not the trouble that they are looking for, or so they say. He's not the trouble that they think he is. The trouble rolls up in the police, which is interesting. And he says, right on time. That's when the police pull up. He's like you said, he was expecting them to pull up. And he said, "Hey, where everybody going? Gang ain't over." They see the cops, they split. And, ain't nothing to talk about. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, what did you think about this speech that he gave?
Uh, Man, this speech was, he put it on in perspective. You're talking about the one to the to the men playing dice, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was a great speech, and what I like about it is the fact that he's really pointing out um, that the situation that they're in, that we're in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you know, it's all created by things, scraps that were given to us, in addition to guns, all those things used against us, then so we hurt ourselves and get put in
Yeah,
jail. So he's speaking it, and he's laying it out on the line for them. While he's waiting, I think while he's waiting for those police to show up, he knows it's just a
right,
matter of time.
right. Yeah, man. And I like how he says, "Let me roll my dice before I lose my mojo." And he rolls up in his snake eyes. Now, if
Hmm.
anybody knows dice or whatever, is that you roll snake eyes, you lose. And it kind of like puts me in this perspective. I think about it as like, he just talked about how the system is set up, what we were brought into, this meat grinder, and what the effects of it, you know, uh, black on black crime, for example. That's what he says. And then he rolls the dice and snake. It's like you can't win. It was almost as if he was saying that regardless of, even though I got the mojo,
Hmm.
I still can't win. He is a Nazi, even though he's a god, he has some power. Him rolling the dice, he could have manipulated dice if he had any quote unquote power, but he's showing you that all of us can't win under this system. And then he said, and then of course, it's like make a bad situation worse. Here come the popo. But of
Yes.
course, we know these are not regular popo. And he gets out the car. They get out the car, and they see who he is right away. So on the wrong side of the world, aren't you, Spider? They know exactly who he is. And he begins to mouth off at him, tells him where to go. He goes wherever he wants to go. And so I'm sure I'm glad you took off them costumes a little early for Hallows Eve. And of course, we see these demons or whatever, their eyes, and they begin to show their teeth and things of that nature. And he's not sweating them at all because he knows who they are and they know who he is. And he lets them know, he says, look, you can't mess with me. You know what I'm saying? Don't even waste your time. And so he tells him, though, he says, he kind of patronizes him. Said, but I admire the moxie. And so they kind of like run off or try to run off or whatever. And, he begins to inflict or show some light, which is, I thought is pretty interesting that,
Yeah.
this light begins to radiate off of him. And these are beings of darkness, and the light, to Rodney Barnes's point about Jehovah at the very, very beginning of the comic book, that light, we kind of see some of that here. And we get to see more of that a little bit later on. But he begins to ask the question, he says, where is he? And of course, then they kind of answer him in a riddle. And so, one of the demons says, he's the one who sings. He's in the one who sings. Talk about Al and Henry. He's looking for Corson. He says, but moves to she who brings salvation. And he says, I hate rhyming demons. So, what I'm saying? And of course, I don't know where that came from, but I just thought that was kind of hilarious. So, he kind of eliminates them. And so he begins to think about it. He says, the one salvation brings another God. And then he says, or an enlightening one. And he holds the dice in his hand, and it's a 7.
A 7. Yep.
And so the question then becomes, who is he talking about? Because, of course, we know that the demon's actually talking about Nita, right? But he says the one salvation brings. And so you see the 7, so we know that if you want to know anything about Bible literacy or whatever, that 7 is considered to be the perfect number, or the order or the number of completion, which represents God or Elohim or Jehovah. So that's an interesting puzzle right there. And so, I like this story in that, Rodney Barnes is giving us some mystery in the midst of this horror. You know what I'm saying? He's putting us in places like we're seeing a Nazi, wrestle with this riddle or deal with this riddle or this thought, about who is he talking about? He says, is it another God or an enlightened one? And we're kind of like right there along with him, wondering who. Now we got some insight, of course, talking about Nita or whatever, but there's more to this clearly. So I
Yeah.
love that about Rodney Barnes. He gives us some breadcrumbs, but he won't give us the whole loaf.
Hmm. We know it's
Yeah.
Nita, but now you're wondering, so what's the deal with this salvation? And
Yes.
and whose salvation is it? That's what
Yeah.
I was
Exactly.
questioning.
Yeah. So we switch gears though. Nita and the cop are back talking, and she comes back to her, I guess, to kind of debrief, so to speak, with what she knows. And he says Henry's last performance didn't go well. Seems like he got into it with two big shots. Word is he took a real beat down. And so the girl was like, 60 years is a long time to hold a grudge for a mollywop. So I would like to know what he was mad about. So they're kind of talking or whatever, you know what I'm saying, and just kind of looking at the harbor or whatever. And it gets interesting because it becomes even though it's an investigation and they're sharing information, it becomes literally a human thing. And what I mean by that is, she says to her, she says, if you were a detective, which I must once again remind you, this woman, the detective is something else. So she says, you aren't, I looked into those big shots that did the deed, my next course of action. That's what she says. She said, whenever I come out here and I look at the dock, it strikes me that this is the first thing human beings stolen from another land saw. This is her perspective. This is what she sees when she looks at this panel. The white girl, on the other hand, I came for the crab cakes and the view. I guess I really need that sensitivity course I keep flaking on. Very, very Karen-esque. So, but it just goes to show you, Rodney Barnes is giving us two perspectives. Nita is seeing something, completely. It's a beautiful scene, but in that beauty, she sees the pain of it. What that scene caused, which was, slavery. But old girl's like, well, I just come down here for the crab cakes. She has no clue about that. You know what I'm saying? In her world of privilege, those kind of things don't come to play or don't mind. It's like, when people are reminded of the sin of slavery in America, it's something that they would just rather forget, or just that you don't even bring up. They don't have a problem with you knowing it, just don't bring it up, or just don't talk about it, because it's, because one of the first things that they're quick to say is, well, I didn't do it. It's not my fault. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But what we have here is two worlds together, and one benefit and one's being crushed by those realities. You have all this beauty, you have all this opulence, you have all of this resource, all of this money, all this power, all this fortune, all this infrastructure that was built on the backs of Black people and Chinese people when they built the railroad. So I think that is a very sober reminding of our world and how different our perspectives are. So, she kind of, I think she kind of realizes, talking about the detective, what she said. And, it's like she tried to be kind of funny, but she realized how insensitive it was. So, I guess I really need that sensitivity course I keep flaking on. It's like, I shouldn't have said that. She knew when it went out of her mouth that she had said it, but it's out there now.
Mm-hmm.
So, to make myself feel good, maybe I just need to go take a course. Yeah, maybe you need to. So, I'd advise it, among other things, but this is where she is. And apparently she gets a call, and she's off to another scene. And he says, got another crime scene to clean up, catch up later. And Nita's just like, yeah, And that's the story of America in a nutshell. You know, one person is kind of gripped by what they're looking at, and the other person is kind of shifting her focus, because that's the thing about us as African people that live in this country. We're only allowed to shift our focus, but so much. We're always drawn back to certain realities. Like we couldn't, how is it that Nita could like have a discussion about what's going on with Howard Henry? She looks out at the horizon, and that's the very thing that comes to her mind. Because she says, whenever I come out here, it's a reoccurring theme for her. It's not something that she just thought about it just now, like an aha moment. She says, whenever I come out here, it strikes me that this is the first thing that human being stolen from another land saw. That's amazing. So yeah, that's a pretty powerful thing too. I love these books, man, by Rodney Barnes, because he packs a lot of stuff in these books, which is why it takes us so long to talk about them.
Yeah, he's gonna
But
keep you
yeah,
thinking. He's not gonna let the reader forget. Good, good stuff.
yeah, absolutely. And so we shift gears again. There's a lot in this book, man. Corson, we know he's lurking somewhere. He's kind of like in the backdrop of all of this. Uh, and we see Howland Henry kind of like walking along. He's got shoes on now. Did you peep that?
I I didn't notice that. He does? He has shoes on?
Yeah, he's got
Okay.
shoes on. He's got like boots on.
Oh,
He says,
okay.
I will get his attention if it means that I have to destroy all 7 billion of his children one by one. We know he's talking about God.
I think that's
Says if
blood.
it,
I think that's blood around his leg. It looks like boots, but there's blood around his leg.
yeah, you know what? I take that back. It sure look like boots, but you're right. Might just be caked up blood
Here we go.
and mud.
You see that? You look carefully.
Yeah, you're right. I stand to be corrected. You're right. You're right. You're right. That's just caked up mud and blood.
From that head he stepped on.
Yeah, man. They like boots. It's like he wearing the dude stuff. That is Jason Shawn, Jason Sean Alexander, bruh. I need you to holler at Black Comic Lords, man. We need to have a talk. We oh, but Corson is having this thought while Henry is kind of moving along. He's just kind of passing by stuff. He's not off to himself in his own thoughts. And he says, when I'm done, there will be tears shed in heaven. The ones that stand out, those whose light shines the brightest, will be the first to look into the abyss. So we know that Corson has no love for God nor his creation. And so we're going to get, I'm pretty sure, the next couple of issues, a deeper taste of that. We go back to our detective, and she's looking at these bodies. Some of them are decapitated, and so she's looking at this stuff, and she says, "You know what? Maybe she's right, or I've lost my mind." So she calls Nita, and then she tells her, she says, "I think I'm ready to play it your way." She says, "Not sure, but okay." Then there's a knock at the door. Jason's there with her. And, he busts through the door, starts hollering Henry, starts singing. Should have minded your own business. Now, but you want to run. And so, you know, uh, she's, I guess, reaching for a gun. She says, go on, baby, get the gun. Ain't gonna help. I can promise you that. Because Holly Henry don't roll like that. So she starts shooting. And, you know, all we see is like this tail being knocking the gun out of her hand. And then, of course, we don't even realize that Anansi has made his way to her place as well. And he asks, he says, Corson, would you please, I guess while he's singing, shut the F up? And that's how the issue ends. On literally a cliffhanger.
Hmm. So,
So, yeah,
this book is a great debut for a Nazi, right? Um,
right,
he makes himself known at the end, just as she's cornered by these demons, by Corson, sorry, in the I guess he's a demon, but he's got a lot of sub demons with him.
right.
He comes in just the right time.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I just, it's like, wow. And, it's weird that he even, because he hasn't met Nita yet. And so I'm trying to figure out how he, unless he found a way to track Corson to her or Henry or whatever, because we don't really know, because he's kind of trying to figure these things out. Last time we saw
Hmm.
uh, him, he was trying to figure out what the demon was saying before he eliminated it. So, but anyway, he finds his way to the house where Holland Henry goes into to try to attack Nita. That's how that issue ends. Which brings
Now,
us to issue number 4.
now a question for you, Richard. So
Yes.
Corson does have some appearances in Philadelphia. Is that right?
Yeah, just like one or two. He's not prevalent in the book. Yes.
Okay. All right.
He has not been revealed, because here's the thing. You know what? I take it back. It is a big reveal. Not a big reveal, but Corson in Philadelphia was met by Seesaw. If you remember who Seesaw is the young black kid that went to go get a Nazi's help. He sought out a Nazi for help, but
Hmm.
he ran across Corson on his way trying to meet different deities to get help. So there is that connection in terms of Philadelphia, and that's the connection that he is as far as Philadelphia goes. So yeah, yeah, he um, he was sought after. Um, not sure why he went to go seek Corson, but I mean, he had visited Jesus, he visited Buddha, the other deities or whatever, but he ran across Corson because he was just looking for someone that would help him. But I do remember that he was
Hmm.
in that book for that reason. So he didn't have a direct relationship with Corson, but Corson was made known in that book through that exchange. So yeah, yeah. Rodney he had all this on the table way before we all had a clue. And I'm not sure how long he had these stories in his head, but wow, pretty amazing, man. Pretty amazing. Which brings us to issue number 4. Uh, yes, that's my cover. That's my favorite cover. I'm not a fan of the Saturday Evening Post, because I don't want Corson's butt in my collection. I just could not rock with that, and I just thought that was so. I mean, he's just sitting there. They like at a lunch counter, and he just sitting there looking at Nita like, "What's up?" I just could not justify putting that in my long box. But this is horrifying enough either way. And
So you're talking about this cover, right?
yes, yes, yes. Pull it up, pull it up. Yes, that one. I mean, she just really just, and I'm like, this is sister. I'm like, you just really just looking at this dude like this is normal. Really, he just kind of just sitting there, just like they about to order lunch or something. Now, of course, she's got a pistol in her hand or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't start none, won't be none. But we know
Hmm.
pistols don't work on course. But
So, but
yeah,
overall, you don't have a problem with the Norman Rockwell homages in Saturday
no,
Evening
no, no,
Post.
no.
It's just this
I
one, right?
just that one. I mean,
Oh,
why
okay,
they got
all
my
right.
man's butt crack And that's all I'm saying. I mean, I just don't know. I'm just not gonna put, no. Of course, your butt crack does not belong in my long box. So that's why, when it comes to covers or whatever, I chose this one. this we're gonna go. I think this is cover A. This is the A
That's the A
cover.
cover. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, cover A is good. This one here, I'm cool with this Norman Rockwell. I'm good with this one. No, I saw that first time I saw it. I was like, I got this. So yeah. So anyway, issue 3 was amazing, but issue 4, I'm just thinking that Rodney Barnes is in a laboratory somewhere, and he's just really trying to, like, what can I do to, like, really blow people's minds apart. I'm not talking about blow up people's minds symbolically. I think this man really is trying to get somebody's brain to really come out of their skull, because um, issue 4 is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing because it's a very fast moving issue, and it's an issue that it gives us some backstory, and where we wind up in it is just not what we signed up for. But hey,
Hmm.
you know. So we go back in time, uh, March 12th, 1968, and Henry is staring up at the stars, and he's happy. It says there, he says, "I was happy." It says the things that matter in life, family, health, career, I had them all, and I wanted to live in that moment forever. It says, but I soon learned that that's not how life works. And I think I want to stop and say something about that, because there's a lot of truth in that. You can, Maslow's hierarchy of needs dictates that you achieve certain things. And then after you achieve those certain things, there's things like appreciation that you climb after food, clothing, and shelter. You move up to a certain status level, if that makes any sense. And you know, some of us may have had that point, that sweet spot, as I like to call it, and then some of us may not. Um, I know that I have to pinch myself sometimes over the life that God has blessed me with. And what I mean by that is that, when I uh, go out and work hard every day, I come home to a beautiful house, beautiful wife, awesome dog. I get to work in ministry and do the things I love. And for fun, this is what I do for fun. Comic books is what I do for fun. And it gives you, pause to just say thank you. But in the midst of that, life happens, and you get bad news, and people around you hurt, and when they hurt, you hurt. And you know, it's like, if you have a pessimistic view of life, you're always someone that is waiting for the other shoe to drop. That things cannot be good too long. Life is just not designed that way. Something's going to happen. Murphy's Law, they say, if something go wrong, it will. And you know, Henry is kind of staring up at the stars. He's got money in the bank. He's got a beautiful family. He's enjoying this. And he's getting ready to have dinner. And he gets 2 visitors. And it says, "Evening, gentlemen. What brings you by?" It says, "Evening, folks. Evening, Henry, folks. Can we get a word with you, Henry?" So they begin to talk about, well, he offers them something to eat first, and he's like, "Yeah, can I give you some got some blue crabs and They finna grow up. And he's like, maybe next time. So they blowing him off, but they got some stuff that they got to tell him. So y'all save me some potato salad. So got some bad news, Henry. And you know, he says, hate to bring it to you on this fine night as this one, but what's going on, fellas? He says, we'll have to end our relationship. Their recording relationship. And they begin to tell him that you know, music is changing, times are changing. But if you peep this though, in the last panel of that page, where he's explaining to them, not that one, the one before that, the page before that. I think this was telling. If you could bring that up.
All right, hold on, let me get it back up.
Yeah. Okay. So they're having this talk. You know, that's not. It's the page before that. Yeah, go down right there. Stay right
Oh, the
there. He
glasses.
says, "What's going on?" Yes.
Yep,
What's
yep.
going on, fellas? Glasses are red. So he's just kind of looking at him. He's not talking. The other guy's doing all the talking, it looks like. So he says, going to end our relationship. This is why. It says, country's taste in music has changed, blah, blah, blah. And all the kids want these days is protest music, blah, blah, blah. It's not like going to change the damn thing, but it's what's flying up the charts. And he said, I'm gonna go elsewhere. You know, y'all not the only game in town. And he tells him, says, for you, we are. He said, we own your recording rights, Henry, and your publishing. And if you're planning to howl anytime soon, won't be for anybody but us. He said, my rights, my publishing, I had that contract checked out by my attorney. He says, who we visited right before we strolled into his office. And when you think about that, the world that Henry was just thankful for has come crashing down. Now, the guy has a smirk on his face. He says, but if the idea of recording pops into that head of yours, expect a juicy lawsuit. And from the look of things, you can't afford to fight. And of course, the guy with the red sunglasses, he says, might want to get back to that potato salad before it's gone. Poor Henry, his heart is broke. His heart is broke. Those tears, he's looking at his family, and it's like, man, his perspective, what he thought he had, he found out he didn't have at all. And so, like anything, life changing is this. You go from sadness. He says, after that night, there was no joy. And all hope was placed tonight with rage.
And did you notice how his eyes slowly turn red too?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And clearly this is where Corson plays. He plays in the rage of people's pain. And it switches us back to where issue 3 left off. Nita's got the gun pointed at him. The Nazi's like standing right next to her. And then there's Jason. He's there. And so he's pouring out these demons or Corsons. And, she begins shooting or whatever. And then, a Nazi kind of begins to talk to Corson. It's like, the world don't need none of this BS, Corson. Life is tough enough as is. And then he begins to talk to Corson, to Nazi. He says, and here's the funny part. This is the first time that Howland Henry is talking. Everywhere else, he's singing. He's been singing. Now he's talking. He says these, because he's talking to an equal, if that makes any sense, or a contemporary, a peer.
Mm-hmm.
So these are not your worshipers, and not. You have no business here. And then, Nancy's like, people are my worshipers, and to them goes my concern. The time right now is for you to go. And he hits him with the light. Nazi don't, a Nazi, demons don't like the light. The light scares the hell out of demons, or it scares hell from, uh, and so you see this light goes, and you see Henry flying to a window. Nita, by the way, is emptying her clip. She's still firing. She's still firing. They having this conversation, and Nita just like blah blah blah. Now, I don't know what kind of gun Nita got, but I don't know if it's a 380 or a Saturday Night Special, but she got rounds of bullets. she's got plenty of bullets, and she's just emptying the whole clip. And after I guess he leaves, he says he's gone. That Corson doesn't choose his pawns lightly. And then Nita says, Corson, of the 4 demon kings? It's like, yeah, So she knows something of Corson. And it get kind of funny because, and she asked him a question. She said, didn't I hear him call you a Nazi as a spider storytelling god from a Uber folklore? And he looks at it, he says, you asked that like a kid coloring Dr. King on a Happy Meal box. I thought that was funny. Because, it's really, I think it's twofold. I think one, he's being he's being facetious, of course, but two, there's a thought like, I remember, I'll give you this example, and I'll just use myself. I remember one time I was talking with a Ghanaian sister she's from Ghana, of course. But I remember talking to her and telling her about Marcus Garvey. And I remember thinking at the time, I was kind of taken aback that she didn't know who Marcus Garvey was. And you have to realize that, with time and with age, the people that you may connect with, that person may not connect with or don't know how to connect with. And so when he asks this question, or when he makes this statement, he says, you asked that like a kid coloring Dr. King on a Happy Meal box. In essence, he's saying that, how is it that you don't know who I am? It's if you had to be, someone had to tell you. In this case, a demon had to inform you of who I was. And really, that speaks to us as Black people knowing our history, knowing our culture, knowing our mythologies, knowing our beginnings, beyond these shores, because that's kind of the whole thing. Shout out to Dion Donovan, who is one of the cats behind the scene podcast. I know he was in here earlier. I don't know if he's still here, but he did a podcast and they talked about Black History Month. And one of the things that he talked about was that Bed Bath Beyond had a Black History set, I guess you could buy. Something, I don't know if it was a gift set or whatever it was, but Bed Bath Beyond was trying to sell some kind of product, and we're using Black History Month as a pitch to Black people or
Mm,
to anybody that would buy it in the name of Black history. And so a lot of our stories and a lot of our culture, like today we see it with hip hop, that you watch TV, commercials, a lot of it is hip hop. Whereas years ago, that you would never see nothing like that happen. Now it's kind of like we're selling hip hop is selling hamburgers, hip hop is selling shoes, hip hop is selling, all kind of stuff or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's crossed over, and now it's not revered anymore. It's just a part of the cultural fabric, so to speak. So when he answers her this way, it's funny to me, but it's almost a matter of factly way. Like you answer that like a kid, coloring Dr. King on a Happy Meal box, you know. And so because the thought is, okay, a Nazi in the commercial, or I should say, in the pop culture. Some of us may know who a Nazi is. A lot of us don't. You could say the word a Nazi, and a lot of people won't know who you're talking about. But if you've done any studies or if you've done any reading on African folklore literature, that name has come up somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
So, and that's kind of how it is when we talk about our stories. It's funny because if you and I were to create a character, do we create that character based on somebody historical, or do we create that character based on something mythological, or do we create that character based on something psychological? Because I think that a lot of the stuff that we have today in comics is more psychological than historical and then mythology wise, because a lot of us don't know our history, unfortunately. And those that do, um, they do to their own peril in the sense that, okay, to tell the truth about certain things means I have to go against the the narrative that promotes this way or not that way. We live in a Western society. So anything that's Eastern and I try to promote as Eastern, somebody's always ready to tell me to go back to Africa or go back where you come from just because I choose to challenge what's been considered the norm. So I don't know who Facebook user is, but he's asking, he says, what's the talk about today? Well, we're talking about Nita Hawes, issues 3 and 4, and we're currently talking about issue 4 right now. So, given that though, I mean, what is your take on that? On that exchange with her? Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I think I got the same take that you did. And another piece of it, I keep thinking about the way that Mr. Barnes chose to have Anansi communicate as well, because a lot of
right?
times you think of a god communicating to somebody, that language is not the way you expect a god to communicate.
No,
You'd expect something that's more
no,
godlike, and he's definitely not that. So,
no,
and
no,
even
no,
the
no,
next,
no, no.
and even his next statement, when he's asking, "Wait, did I see a cute little Nubian ghost running around here?"
Yeah, now that was funny. I gotta say that was kind of weird and funny too. You see a little cute Nubian around here somewhere. I just thought that was hilarious, man. It was like, wow. But I have to also realize that this is a God, quote unquote, saying this. So, he could refer to Jason in that way.
Hmm.
But it still comes up, it's still funny, you know, either way, because it's like, didn't you see him? He was running somewhere. So again, perhaps this is our Rodney Barnes's way of telling us that Jason is real.
I think so. It's a reveal.
so we, because if a Nazi can see him, you know, yeah, he's letting us know that Jason is just not a thought in Nita's head, but that he's really a ghost, and so he's going to be around, and but he comes and goes. I thought that was funny that after all this happened or whatever, he just disappears. So,
I'm
um,
also in my mind, I'm picturing in a movie, this would be a scene where some people kind of, get excited, hey, okay, he's real, this is real.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That I think that's one of the things too that if this if they are able to bring this part of the franchise into the entertainment, because we do know Philadelphia is going to be a show at some point. How they would do this and how they would approach this, because this is a full blown horror
Hmm.
comic, but it has elements of humor in it that make it digestible. Because I'll be honest, I don't know if I would enjoy this book just solely based on the terror that's in it, because it's pretty
Yeah.
terrifying. The humor kind of gives us a relief from the devastation and the terror that you feel by reading and seeing some of these images. I mean, it's pretty serious, bro.
Yeah, if you
So,
think about it, I mean, you think about what just happened before he makes this comment, right? You got her unloading her clip at this
yep,
monster, him shining his light on the monster, so or on Howling Henry, so he goes to the window. Her life is in peril, and one of the first things he said is, "Did I see a cute little Nubian ghost running around here?" That could break things up pretty good.
that is funny. So, okay, want to make a quick acknowledgement. Imani uh, wants to correct us. The interior art is done by Sisman Kurdansky. So there's another guy that's
Oh, okay.
working alongside Jason Sean Alexander, but the art itself on the inside, this is his work. So Amani, thank you for sharing that with us, bro. Because I know
Thanks,
we
Amani.
just kind of been we've been just kind of just talking. I wanted to just kind of check the comments or whatever. Because I was in on the YouTube, the Facebook stuff, but I just switched over to YouTube, and I see some of the comments that the guys are talking about, and he brings it up. So shout out to you, Money, for bringing that to our attention, bro. We really appreciate that. So moving forward, um, then we see him talking with Nita. She's kind of like figuring out what the hell just happened, and she's got a picture of Jimmy Sangster, on, I guess, somewhere in the house. He picks up the picture and he said, "Yeah, I know this cat." And she was like, "Help get some dark ish off of him." And this goes back, of course, to Philadelphia. And you know, he definitely was instrumental. And that's the one thing too. He was in Philadelphia for just a brief second, talking about an accident. And so it's a real treat to see him in these panels today, because I know that some of us, maybe like my man Paul, probably wanted Nancy kind of to stick around in Philadelphia a little bit longer, but we didn't know that Rodney Barnes was going to have him be more instrumental in Nita Hawes' story, and so that's kind of cool that they connect this universe right here. And what's cool about that too, we'll get to it a little bit later on, how this universe connects with the other stories in the Philadelphia universe. So she asked the question, "Is he all right?" Talking about Jimmy. He says, "We hadn't spoken since he left Baltimore to bury his father." He says, "Well, if you call living in a city teeming with vampires good, he's great. He's got a baby on the way too." That's not what she wanted to hear. That is not what she wanted to hear. So now this child who had who has all kind of trauma is now faced with more drama, not trauma, but drama, because they broke up. He moved back to Philadelphia, moved to Philadelphia or Philadelphia. She's happy to hear about him, that he's doing okay. No, yeah, he got a baby on the way. He just says it matter of fact. I mean, he had to know that this was going to be a prickly point, I would think, but maybe not. So, yeah. And he's like, I have no idea if he's the pappy. I mean, I just meant the cat about. He realized. I think he realized. You know what I'm saying? He kind of he kind of let too much go. I just about a month or so ago. Maybe y'all should talk. That's his. That's his. That's his solution. Maybe y'all should talk. I'm telling you, Rodney Barnes is hilarious. Mr. Barnes, if you're watching this or will be watching this, I'm just gonna give you your props. Props to you, brother, for making me chuckle over this book, because it's got too much stuff in it, and this is just hilarious. So she changes the subject, and so she tells him that, "Well, tell me about Corson." And he begins to point out to her who Corson is and what Corson's role is in hell. Um, and so he begins to kind of detail to her this hierarchy, and she asked the question, say, "Well, what do we do to stop him?" He's like, "You don't. You don't stop Corson. You know what I'm saying? Because Corson's immortal. He's not going nowhere. That's a God thing. That's a Jehovah thing. And all you can do is like keep him rooted to this side of reality. And somehow or another, he's found a way. He's punched a hole into this reality through Howland Henry. So, excuse me. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. So, it's an interesting. He gives some interesting thoughts when it comes to Corson, because he says in so many words he doesn't understand why Corson is in Baltimore and why Corson is doing what he's doing. He's trying to figure that out. Part of his, this whole mystery that he's trying to unravel, going back to that dice and going back to what that demon told him, he still has more questions, because even though he's met Corson, talked to Corson, got Corson to leave, he's still trying to figure out why is he in Baltimore and why is he doing what he's doing. Because it's kind of like he's a king in hell. Why is a king in hell doing something that he could send a stooge or a lower demon to do? What's really going on here? So he's trying to figure that out. And he he's still trying to figure that out. So what he decides to do is he says, "You know what? Me and you are going to be like Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker and Rush Hour. We got to get our work on." So they're going to be working together. So that's going to be interesting to see going forward. But she's kind of resistant to that. He was like, "Well, remind me not to invite you to my next kickback, unless we need some ice for the Tito's." So, he is very, very humorous in his exchange with everyone, and so he's not even taking it personal when it comes to her. You know what I'm saying? Which tells me that he's kind of used to being put off, if that makes any sense. And so he tells him before he leaves, he says, "I'd get that door fixed if I were you. It might not be hell, but it's still Baltimore." I thought that was pretty interesting. So he leaves. He's got blood on his sneakers, and she calls the detective, Detective Hart, and lets him know that hey, our catatonic friend just paid me a visit. So funny thing is, he goes off. Now he's back to singing.
Yeah,
He
you
has
saw him
this,
fall out of a window, and
yeah,
possibility maybe he's dead,
right,
maybe. At least not Corson, right? But Hallie Henry.
yeah,
No, no, not the
yeah.
case.
And it's weird because now he's singing, but I'm not sure how much of it's demon and how much is Henry, because the
That's
demon when he was singing
yes,
was singing with red letters.
red lettering.
These
Yeah,
letters are
full
black.
here you go.
So there may be something a little bit to this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's got the red eyes
He has red
still.
eyes. Yeah,
Yeah, but when Corson was kind of in control, we got his thoughts in red letters. These are letters in black. I don't know if that was an error on the inking part when they did this, or it may have been done deliberately. Either way, says, "Okay, girl, you got away, spotted and saved you for another day." So it says, "Think you all tough because you got that gun? Old Henry got something that bright shine too. Gonna turn that warm skin all clammy and blue. Because your Lord in the sky, all big and wise, but mine laughs out loud, because he's the Lord of flies." So I guess he's walking somewhere in the snow. 5-0 rolls up, and he lets the cops have it. So now it's going to get real serious. It's one thing to go out and just attack citizens. Now you went after the police. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. And so somebody sees it. I guess a cop said, "This can't be real." And I guess that is because I'm thinking, is that her? Or is this
yes,
who is it?
yeah. She's driving up because Nita, right? Nita just talked to her and said, "Hey, you need to send some police over,"
Okay.
right?
Well, you know what?
So I
They
think
must have did something different with the ink because now she's blonde. She's not blonde. She's brunette here.
you're, I think you're right. Yeah.
So that's why I asked the
She,
question: who is this chick?
well, I think it's her. I'm trying to remember the reason why I thought it was her. Something.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
This
So yeah, a few panels later, her hair is blonde when there's some light shining on her.
okay.
Yeah. So that's definitely her.
Well, anyway, it's just maybe that's just something we observed. So either way, she's looking at it like this can't be real. But the guy's like, "Hey there, sweet old vanilla wafer. Welcome to the party." So the cops get up like they got demons in them now. Say, "Don't be shy. Say hi to your brothers in blue." Like, no. Like, what? Don't tell me to be shy. So it gets interesting. This is kind of bizarre.
And these are the cops. These are the cops that were just killed a few minutes ago, right?
Yeah.
So
This
he's
is
taking
well,
them
how
over.
about letting how about letting Holly Henry give you a hug? So he wraps her up in some of the demonic stuff, I guess. And I guess a Nazi shows up. The Nazi brings uh Ermoles, that's what they call. He brings some help, basically. So we see these sisters with wings, and I take it that they are angels, and they're full of light, and that's a beautiful picture for sure.
Hmm.
And he brought some help along, and so he starts singing. This ain't right, show ain't fair. The power of light don't wrong around here. Yeah. So he's got to go, I guess, because it's light. And so Anita's trying to fix her door, and she calls Nita, detective calls Nita and says, "Hey, I need you to meet me 2 blocks east of your place." I guess she can't go nowhere. That's what I need you to tell me. Jason's like, Nita, don't go. Wasn't it you that got me into this? He's like, yeah. So she takes off down the road, runs down the street, I guess, 2 blocks from where she lives, and she sees Henry, but she also sees Nancy. Nancy's fighting with Corson. He's like, Nita, no, you shouldn't be here. And so they say the prize is here. So she pulls out her gun. Well, it looks like a regular revolver. It's not a 9. It's not a 380. It doesn't have a clip. It's look like a 6-shot. And so it says there, and I'm taking it. This is Henry talking. You have no understanding of what you're dealing with, girl. And I think when I look at this, that it puts me in the mind that actually, when we talk about the letters, how Corson would speak or sing or whatever, and now the letters in black, this is Henry. We're getting Henry in this particular exchange because clearly Henry made a deal. And so, because he said you have no understanding of what you were dealing with, but you will. And so I'm asking myself, would Corson say that to her? Like, I don't think he would.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I'm still wondering if maybe I guess I want to do some checking to see if I don't think the artist changed because the artwork is similar, right? I'm wondering if
yeah, yeah.
maybe, yeah, okay, maybe there's some significance to the fact that the red lettering is gone because it didn't hit me, but as you bring it up, yeah, um,
Yeah,
yeah,
man. So yeah, it might boast some more research on it, but so he turns her gun hot, you know, very hot, and he looks at it. He says, "You are the prize." And she said, "Me?" And he was like, "Not your body, dear child, your soul." So he pulls her soul out of her.
hmm
Nancy's like, "No," but it's too late. Next panel, Nita, bless her heart, is looks like to be somewhere other than where she was. Definitely is no snow around. Lots of fire. And she's like, "What? Where am I? What?" She looks up, she sees these demons, and she starts running. And then she says, "Moments of bliss between moments of trauma. That's life in a nutshell. But I may ask, what is death? The answer for each of us is coming." And of course, we get the picture of another connection
hmm
of Sheriff Gatlin, Corson's bounty hunter. And he's chasing her, going after her. And that last page, it says, "And for some, it's coming sooner rather than later." So he looks at it and says, "Who are you?" And then we get the letters in red again. "I am Corson. Let me be the first to say, welcome to hell." So After all of this, Nita gets snatched up and is told that she's the prize. We don't know
And,
what that means.
and guess what else? Red letters.
Yes.
Hmm.
Corson, we see, but here's the funny part. We see somebody standing before, looking kind of a black guy, kind of looking like, I don't know who that is.
I know. I did ask Rodney on Facebook, and he answered me. He said that's the
What?
mayor from Philadelphia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty interesting. So they're all there, and this is where this issue drops off at. It's like, wow.
Hmm. So now the question is, what's the plan, right? Why do they have her here?
Exactly. Mr. Barnes let us know too that the story arcs are in issues of six. So we have
Hmm.
two more books in
Two
this
more.
particular story arc. And she's going to go on to another assignment. The question that we have left, that's what we need to tangle before we get out of here is now that the prize is quote unquote been snatched, what does that mean? What happens to Henry?
Hmm.
Because it's like, okay, you've killed you killed a lot of people that were responsible for the things that happened to you. Are we going to learn what his bargain with the devil or with Corson was? Will we learn that? Will we learn about, you know, Nita's connection? We've never heard her referred to this point as the prize.
Yep.
So, is it because she has some spiritual insight? What is that? Why wasn't Anansi able to protect her? That's another question. So, and what's Anansi gonna do? Is he gonna is he gonna try to follow her into hell to save her? Because remember, we still talking about the question of salvation that Anansi was struggling with earlier. So we have that also to consider.
And
So yeah,
something
man.
else. Do you remember when Corson was or Hallie Henry was walking to Nita's to where she lived? Remember we saw
Mm-hmm.
the what looked like boots on his feet, right? He made a
Right.
comment that he was trying to get, I think he was talking about God's attention for some reason. So what did he mean
Yeah.
by that too?
Yeah. Yeah. He said if I have to kill all 7 billion of them one by one. Yeah.
Hmm.
So that's ooh, it's probably gonna get pretty deep these next couple of issues. So we'll see where it goes, man. But overall, I mean, what did you think of issue number 4?
Um, I was good to get to this point because I think we got a little bit more information, but answer some questions. But then at the end, you got Johnny Gatlin, you got the
Yep.
mayor from Philadelphia, you got the fact that I didn't pick up on it until you mentioned it, that it probably was Howling Henry that was talking to her, um, before she got pulled through instead of Corson. So now that has
Right.
me, wondering
Yep.
a lot too. So there's still a lot to figure out, and then there's still more of her backstory, right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, but we
Yeah.
do know now. Hey, her apparently her brother is real. The ghost of her
Yep.
brother is real, and
Yep.
we've got a lot more information about Anansi, but a lot more questions.
Absolutely. So yeah, man. So that's what we got up. So guys, we have just talked about issues 3 and 4. We are a little bit over 2 hours in, so we're going to go ahead and get ready to wrap this up. I know you said we had some information we wanted to talk about before we got out of here.
Yeah, yeah. So let me do this first. Let me remove this. See if I can move this banner.
Okay.
Okay. So in our video with Mr. Barnes,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about the Philadelphia universe a little bit, and I just want to make sure that if anybody wants to read more, because obviously he's all these are linked together,
Right.
You can go to Image Comics, right? You can get your Image Comics from your local comic book shop or online store, right, in print, and you can get
Mhm.
Philadelphia and Nita Hawes Nightmare Blog. But then Connected Stories, Elysium Gardens, Johnny Gatlin, and then a new one called 20 Degrees Past Rigor. You would need to go to Mr. Barnes' Substack to get those. But as you can see, all of these are linked together, and I think you're going to have to read all of them to get a complete picture of what's going on in this universe. So this is
Right.
where you go to find them.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, I am subscribed to Rodney Barnes' Substack, but I have not gotten the level to where I get the comics yet. I only get the emails or the blogs that he posts about
Hmm.
the stories or whatever. So, um, and at some point, I recognize that I'm gonna have to do that. A little bit more money out of my pocket, but Rodney Barnes has been very exceptional in terms of his writing, and so I do think that it'll be a well worth investment. To I got a chance to read the first issues of Elysium Gardens, Johnny Gatlin and 20 Past Rigor. They are on his Substack. I'm not sure about Elysium Gardens and Johnny Gatlin right now, but I do know he just posted recently 20 Degrees Past Rigor, the first issue. You can see that and read that for free, so you can kind of get an idea. And that's we know that Philadelphia is vampires, Elysium Garden is werewolves, and 20 Past Rigor is zombies. So he's
Yes.
bringing all of these elements with these demons all around it. I mean, he's really creating a world and possibility. I'm thinking stuff like, anime, live action.
Mm.
He could go a lot of different directions with this universe. So we'll see though, man. Yeah.
And then one other thing I just want to mention, I want to keep this drumbeat going. If you
Yeah.
got a comic that you love and you want to see it continue to be made, then what you do to show love for that is make sure you're pre-ordering that comic before the final order cutoff. And the reason for that is because that really determines how many comics get ordered. If you place an order after final order cutoff, then you're basically buying. You're going to purchase whatever extra your comic book shop ordered. But if you want your order to count as an additional order to the publisher, then make sure you're talking to your comic book shop and having them and placing your order before that final order cutoff. Extremely important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, you got a lot of times, guys, they're not, if our books are not selling, it's because the FOCs are low or there are
Hmm.
none. And so it's definitely important to make sure um, you put in an order with your comic book shop because it does two things. It helps your comic book shop financially. It also helps you to be abreast to what's new because guess what? You look at a title like Something is Killing the Children. Initially, that book didn't have a lot of copies. It was a Tinian title that was an independent book. No one that wasn't on hardly nobody's radar. Now people are crying that they didn't get in early on that because that first book is in the stratosphere, and that's a modern book. It's not a book that came out 10 years ago. This book is literally no more than maybe a year or two old.
2020. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, uh, Philadelphia issue number one, right now, you can get it for reasonable. But guess what? When that book becomes a movie or show, that issue number one is going to go up through the roof. And, our books do not get taken seriously if the FOCs are not there. People they gauge interest based on the FOCs. There's no getting around. There's no getting around it. If the FOCs are not there, then the comic book shops are going to order low, which is why The Black Panther issue 3 was traumatically, not traumatic, that's not a word, but it was tragic, I'd say, in that a lot of people missed out because they didn't have it on their pull list. They just thought they could go to the shop and grab it off the shelf. They went there, it's not there. Just recently, Avengers 53. Nobody cared, nobody knew that this was going to be a new iteration or variant of Black Panther. But guess what? Now is the second print coming. And guess what? If you don't have that on your list, of FOC or on your, getting your LCS to order it for you, you're going to miss that too, because that's going to probably be a low print run. They're not going to load it. They're not going to overload it. They're going to order a few books, but they're not going to overload it. So FOCs is the way to go, guys, if you're reading comics on a regular basis. But anyway, that's that. So before we get out of here, Derek, are you reading anything in particular you want to talk about real quick before we get out of here? Books of note?
Not really. I've got some catching up I want to do.
Yeah.
You recommended, I'd asked you a question about some DC series, right? So I've got, what is it, the Long Halloween? Is that what it is?
Yeah, the graphic novel Long Halloween.
Yeah. So you
Yeah,
recommended that one
Batman.
as Batman. I
Yeah.
haven't started yet, but I do have it and ready to read that. And
Okay.
then
Cool.
let's see what else. Trying to I've been trying to read through the uh, intergalactic empire of
Yeah.
Wakanda as well.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to kind of realize that these characters are not the original characters. They
Right.
were,
Right. Right. Right.
but yeah,
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
enjoying that too. So
Okay.
trying to go back and read. Yeah.
Right. Right. I did pick up some new books. Books I'm currently reading, like Shadow Man. I'm reading that. This is the 6th issue of Shadow Man. So I'm enjoying that book. It's independent book, valiant title. I just picked up a couple of new books, new reads. New Masters, which is
Mm,
Afrofuturism book. So I'm reading that, and reading also Manor Black, which is a Dark Horse title, Fire in the Blood. Pretty interesting. Got to see where it's going to go though. And I am reading Magic Order. This is
mm.
issue 4. Magic Order is pretty dope. So those are just some of the books that I'm reading. Hadn't really read any Marvel DC stuff. I did
Are you still
read
reading Buckhead?
Marvel Voice.
Did you get Buckhead as well?
I have not bought the latest Buckhead. I am reading
Okay.
Buckhead. I haven't bought the latest one. I think it's up to issue
Okay.
3 now.
Yeah.
So I got to go to my shop and pick up. And I don't have that on my pull list because I wanted to try it. It's pretty good, so I'm gonna go ahead and add it. But I did read Marvel Voices,
Hmm.
but I'm kind of mad at Marvel, and I'm gonna tell you why before I get out of here because I have to. How you gonna put Night Thrasher on the cover of this book? This is cover A. How you gonna put Night Thrasher on the cover of the book and you don't have a Night Thrasher story? Marvel, I need answers. I need answers. I mean, it was great. I enjoyed most of the stories in Marvel Voices. It's pretty cool. I know a lot of y'all was going crazy trying to get the variants and all that. Cover A, I'm good. I don't need nothing else. But yeah, I would have liked to see a Night Thrasher story. We hadn't seen Night Thrasher for a while. I mean, I know he's in New Warriors, but a Night Thrasher story would have been kind of cool. 1 page, 2 pages. There were some books, some stories that were only 1, 2 pages in this book, so they could have made it. But anyway, that's just.
Mm.
But that's it, man. You got anything else?
No, nothing else for now.
Oh, cool.
Hopefully, got a few other shows, ideas for some lives that we're talking about in the background. So,
Yeah,
maybe, do a little something with Paul, a little something with Herschel. Got some other people I'm talking to in the background. So, see if we can get a little more activity going on here.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, guys, that's going to be it for us. This is your boy Rich with Derek. Want to say thank you guys for hanging out with us. Whether Dion, Imani, Mir, paperbacks and soundtracks, behind the scene, all of you guys, and those that I may have missed. Wanted to say thanks again for hanging out with us. Like the video, please share, please subscribe to our uh, YouTube feed, and look for some good, dope content from us in the future. Also, go check out the Rodney Barnes interview. It's pretty dope, and it's about an hour and a half. I think you'll enjoy it very much so. So, for my man, Derek and Rich, we're going to get out of here. We want to say we love you, we care, read Black comic books, go to the comic shop. It's not about just what you know about the TV shows. Read the comics, and that's it. We out of here. Peace.
Pre-order, pre-FOC.
Pre-order.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
everybody.
Good night.